This is the Indigenous Perspective, a podcast dedicated to highlighting Native perspectives regarding systematic, social, and cultural issues embedded in the Durango community and beyond.
Jakob Barlow Yeshe Toh-Atin Nishle Maidesh Kijni Bashichin Deshchini Dashiche Kintluchini Dashanella. Hello, my name is Jakob Barlow. I am Dene, and my ancestral homelands are in Cuba, New Mexico, Monument Valley, Arizona, and Black Mesa, Arizona. I was born and raised in Page, Arizona, and in high school went to Phoenix, Arizona, and now I'm here my second semester at Fort Lewis. I'm majoring in journalism and multimedia studies, and I'm happy to be here.
She Alex Nishle, Kia Ani Nishle, Todik Ojer Bashichin, Kitlachini Dashache, Ashihit Dashanella. Hello, my name is Alex Lee. I use the pronoun she, her. I identify with the Dene tribe, and I'm excited to be here as one of your hosts of this podcast. I do go to school at Fort Lewis College here in Durango, Colorado, and I come from the Navajo Nation from Shiprock, New Mexico.
Hi, my name is Esther Crawford. I just transferred here to Fort Lewis College from my hometown in Michigan. I'm really excited to be here and work on this project with everyone.
This episode is a radical recentering of Indigenous perspectives regarding Durango's racist-ass Toh-Atin statue, or more specifically, caricature, which is somehow meant to represent Indigenous peoples.
Before we jump in, however, we must acknowledge that KDUR, the public radio station we are currently utilizing here on Fort Lewis College, is situated upon the ancestral homeland and territory of the Nuchu, who were forcibly removed by the United States government. It should also be acknowledged that this land is connected to the Jicarilla, Pueblo, Hopi, and Dene nations.
We think that it is important to not only highlight the ancestral ties to this land, but to also highlight the destructive nature of the ongoing settler colonial project that is Fort Lewis College and the city of Durango.
We understand that rather than a particular event or incident in history, settler colonialism is a structure that requires settlers to permanently settle in indigenous territories, thereby seeking to physically and culturally eradicate indigenous inhabitants through violence, coercion, and the implementation of laws, policies, and organizations.
We therefore maintain the position that until demands for relational restitution are fully recognized and facilitated for the local, targeted, and displaced Indigenous people, land acknowledgements are necessary in this space. Land back is indeed nothing short of lives back.
Take down the chief! Take down the chief! Take down the chief!
The dehumanization of Indigenous peoples throughout so-called America is nowhere near over. Next time you find yourself strolling through downtown Durango on Main Avenue, for instance, turn west onto 9th Street. Shortly after turning, you will come across the Toh-Atin Gallery's infamous chief statue on the northwest corner of Main Avenue and 9th Street.
The chief used to be a part of a large sign for the Chief's Diner that was located in Durango many years ago. When it closed in the 80s, the Clark family purchased it to use as a part of their display.
Indigenous-led public discourse and actions surrounding the chief have called for its removal, highlighting the racist, dehumanizing historical context of Native mascots and caricatures as settler colonial tools. In response, however, Jackson Clark II, co-owner of Toh-Atin, and the chief stated, "We have no intention to hurt or offend anyone. I have Native American artists who are friends and who would be really upset if the chief came down. Even if Clark's so-called Native American friends have defended the chief, what about the victimized Indigenous people who have called for justice against the chief's presence? What about the historical and ongoing weaponization of mascots and caricatures as tools of domination? Why is the violence of caricatures like the chief still so pervasive? In order to develop a more critical understanding of the harm of the chief, we have invited Stephanie Dressen, an Apache Dene elder, to share and unpack her firsthand experience and perspective regarding the overall controversy and conflict. Stephanie has been integral to the collective movement demanding justice from both Toh-Atin Gallery and the city of Durango.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Esther. First off, as always, introduce myself by clans, introduce who I am. So, Stephanie Dressen, Chishinishle, Ashche Bashichin, Twitsotni, Dashanella Kia Ani Dashiche. And in English, that means I am Apache born for Red Chic people. And my grandfather clan on my dad's side is Big Water people, and grandfather clan on my mom's side is Towering House people. I'm originally from Fort Defiance, Arizona. That's where I was born. That's where my tse is buried at. My mom's family is from Little Water, New Mexico, which is outside of Crown Point. And I've been living in southern Colorado since 2002. Currently, I work in finance, the accounting department at the Durango Fire Protection District, and I'm a full-time student at Fort Lewis. My major is an accounting major, and I'm a writing minor. So thank you all for inviting me to speak on a very, very important issue to Native citizens around this area and beyond.
Yeah, and I noticed that back in 2021 there was a Indigenous mascots panel that was supposed to be held at the Durango Arts District, and that was canceled after, I believe, Antonia Clark sent an email to the director of that event. And I was wondering if you could maybe walk us through that whole occurrence, how that started, what you're planning to discuss, and justice or retribution that you've called for following that. It's inherently white supremacy practice of silencing Indigenous voices.
Exactly. That's there's a group of us. We're part of 4 Borderless corners, and we focus on a lot of social justice issues in the area, one of them being the chief as the mascot. And so a panel was created by this group, and we got it together, put the panel together, had a moderator, everything. And the intent of that panel wasn't to demonize the chief statue, which is how the Clarks framed the whole situation, that we were going after them. It was a much broader issue. It had to deal with mascot and dehumanization and the health impacts that come from being dehumanized in that way, and just the complicated issues that surround, Native involvement in this country. There's a lot of overlap, and that's what people don't understand. So the Clarks took it that we were going after them with a target on their back, which in one context, they deserve it. But on the other side, that's not what it was all about. It was also to talk about other issues involving dehumanization, involving how capitalism works in Native society, involving how mental health is, impacted by the dehumanization of Native people. And so they got word of it, and Antonia Clark sent an email to the Durango Art Center director, essentially telling her that we're a bunch of bad Indians. It's just crazy to imagine that the group of us that are involved in this, we do our own things to contribute to society. We're not that caricature of the bad Indian, the rowdy Indian, the mean Indian going after the poor white people and stuff. There's no understanding that as a group that we are helping others in our collective group and everything. So they canceled it. They canceled it under the guise of COVID protocols. And the irony with that is just a couple of weeks before, they had a movie schedule, like a thing for murdered and missing Indigenous women. And there was no requirements for, like it would be optional to have masks and everything, but there was no COVID protocols put in place other than maybe just a cap on how many people they could have in the facility. And so they used it as their excuse for canceling the panel, but behind the scenes, it was that email that Antonia Clark sent to the director of the Durango Arts Center. And then the fallout that happened from after that was that one of the members who are involved with the 4 Borderless corners went and approached the Durango Creative District about what was going on about this, and to hold accountable the people involved with this cancellation of the panel. And they turned around and they went after this person, accused them of being slanderous, that they were, lying essentially about what was going on. We live in a society where, as a Native person, we still have to feel like we're walking around with a target on our back. In this town, in Southwest Colorado, especially Durango, the racism and the discrimination is nuanced. It's hard. It's not outright. It's nuanced. It's under the radar, but it's still there. And that is an example of what happened. Is the power holders in this town, the people that move and shake everything in this town, can conspire with one another to shut down Native voices.
As a student myself here at this institution, Sure, we get like the native tuition waiver, but yet you can go into any classroom and any non-Indigenous person can be skeptical. Oh, you get free education and you're just here because it's free for you. And that's not the situation at all. I mean, you're a student yourself. I'm sure you can attest to this, that it's a lot more than just paying tuition. You know, being a student involves a lot more than just laying down money to take these classes.
Yeah, and you know what's forgotten about as far as like the Native American tuition waiver goes is at what expense came for that to happen. There's no understanding of the fact that your ancestors, the white people who are, accusing us of taking advantage of the system, who are they to come and to tell us that, like, oh, well, you got free tuition? My ancestors were affected by it. There are stories that we can all tell as Native students about how our family were affected from this. We were not left unscathed by this. I can go back to my mom and think about how she was affected by being a boarding school person, right? I can't speak my language because my mom and my grandma decided that speaking English would make me, I guess, better assimilated would be the word. And it's ugly. And there's no understanding of that. It's just this other side of the nuanced racism that comes from white people assuming that we're getting everything handed us for free. We're still going through genocidal practices right now because we're still having our culture taken away from us. We're still having our voices taken away from us. And that's what it's so irritating how, it's like, I'm getting frustrated here now. But it's just like white people make it a black and white issue. Like there's on one side or the other. There's no in between. It's like, but they are part of the in between.
Even that sort of black and white perspective is lateral racism, lateral violence within Indigenous communities. On these articles and so forth and posts on the Durango Herald regarding the chief statue and the Toh-Atin conflict overall, you see Native people going on there and posting things such as, as an Indigenous person, I'm okay with this. I don't see why this is a problem here. And I think that's something that also needs to be talked about. And I was wondering maybe if you have any experiences with that sort of situation.
Not only are we fighting the direct racism that comes from white people, we also have to deal with the fact that we're dealing with lateral violence from our own people. And what I mean by lateral violence is we have people, even within our own families and our communities, that will come back and attack us for what we are doing because we're not playing into the system, right? It's kind of like the only way I can describe what is happening there is that they've become colonized, that they are now colonized and now a part of this system that has been trying to put us down. And if you think about it in the bigger context, that is what this white racist system is trying to do, is that they're trying to replace who we are with their systems. And so that these people who go and agree with the Clarks and whatever they do with that statue, they are essentially they are not only are they and it's a pretty brutal way of looking at it, but I don't know how else to think about it. But it's like our own people are now scalping us. Instead of the white person doing the scalping, it's now our own people who are doing the scalping, and they're scalping their own people. And the white people just sit back there and let it happen. When you look at those articles that are posted, and then there's commentary that comes up, and you have the natives who get on there who go and support Clark for what they're doing. And I have no problem with the statue, and I don't see why they're not focusing on bigger issues. Those kind of things give white people a pass to just keep doing what they're doing, because then they use those natives to say, hey, they're okay with it. Why aren't you okay with it? And it's like, it's much more complicated than that. And that's where this conflict happens as far as the issue goes, because it goes with mental health. It goes with the fact that we have a society that is dealing with discrimination in our face, and also the subtlety of that discrimination. It also has to deal with the fact that we are dehumanized. We all do not look like that statue. And I have to keep repeating this to people. I'm 5 feet. I don't look like that statue. We are not a homogenized version of that statue. There are 570 plus tribes in this entire country, and we all have our unique identity, our unique prayers, our unique ceremonies, our unique languages, everything. And to homogenize us down into this goofy looking, grinning, native-like whatever, it makes it look like that's who we are, and that's not who we are. We are a complicated, beautiful, nuanced generation of people who carry our ceremonies in one hand, our prayers in one hand, and our fight in our other hand. And that's what people don't understand. So it's like, don't listen to those natives that go on social media or go on these social platforms and support the Clarks, because they are not the native voices that are furious with what is going on right now.
Yeah, and then I also, just for reference, y'all, I have the actual letter here from Antonia that was mentioned. If y'all ever.
Hey, that's my zine. I can fold a zine for you if you want while we're waiting. No. Oh, that makes me so happy that that's here. So when we were going to do the panel, one of the things that we were going to do at that panel is hand out these zines. And so I created that. And so when our panel got canceled, which was in November of 2021 was when it was canceled. And so we were like, well, screw it. We're going to still meet on the day that we were going to have the panel. And so we sat in front of the Durango Arts Center and put a table out and we started folding zines. You know, it's like we're in a public space. We're on the sidewalk. And so the cops came. Later on in that evening, we walked around downtown and we just passed those out. And we put a bunch up in front of the gallery and stuff. And we got, I guess the owners of the gallery wanted to file a police report against us for putting those flyers in their building and stuff. And it's kind of like, well, it's a sidewalk. It's a public space. So what you going to do about it? So yeah, that's just those kind of things where weaponizing the police department to work on their behalf to uphold their capitalist structure as far as selling Native arts and stuff and shutting down Native voices. And when you think about how policing works, it's also the fact that they're trying to scare us with police presence to not be bad Indians, to be compliant Indians, and to get back in your spot. And it's like, you just have to keep pushing forward. And that's what that zine reminded me. I forgot about that. And the irony is, I remember when I sat there, I had my smudge bowl out just to kind of like cleanse and bring kind of peace and just feel it. And a white lady went walking by and she stood there and she was like, "Can one of you smudge me off?" And I was like, kind of didn't even know what to think, because it's just the audacity, number one, and number two, the expectation that I'm going to smudge her off. I just looked at her and I was just like, whatever. And so she did it herself and everything, but at the same time, it was just the fact that she had the nerve and the expectation that we should be doing this for her. So it's just those little subtle things that happen in this town that people don't realize that we have to confront on the daily.
On the daily, like, I couldn't help but think that when we walk around day-to-day life, often we're confronted with, again, non-Indigenous people, particularly white, asking us about different cultural things that we are supposed to, like, know. And, you know, part of me is always trying to make transparent that, no, I am brown, I do identify as Diné, but I don't know a single thing about traditional ceremony. I don't know my own language, and ultimately, I have to try to be as transparent, but also have that expectation of being nice to them for some reason and being like, oh, well, unfortunately, I don't know this, I don't know that.
Yeah, that reminds me of, like, you know, growing up in school, we only dedicated one paragraph to Indigenous history throughout, like, all of high school. When the teacher does bring up that history, everyone in the class looks at you as the Indigenous person, contribute to the lesson somehow. Mm-hmm. And when you don't, they're disappointed. I'm wondering, you know, how these people can go beyond just sympathy to actually facilitating Indigenous liberation, sovereignty, and self-determination.
Because even an ally isn't an ally, if you get my drift. Like, they're an ally on one hand, but on the other hand,
they could be problematic.
Exactly.
You know, so the best thing is just to take a seat in the back. If we want you on the front lines to get arrested, move up to the front and do that and stuff. But being an ally means it sounds crazy, but it's like to humble yourself as an ally, to realize that the voice isn't your voice. The voice are these people that you're supposed to be supporting. And don't waste our time for us to sit around and educate you. You know, one way to learn is just to sit there and to absorb and to take it in and to understand and stuff. It's kind of like I had my native ways taken away from me. I'm just barely trying to reclaim it all. And now you want me to waste time telling you how come you shouldn't do this or how come you shouldn't do that? Some of it is just common courtesy. It's kind of like, yes, let the elder go first. Let them go to the front of the line to get the first food. Yes, take a little bit of water, not the whole water. You know, those kind of things. It's like, don't waste our time with those kind of things. If you want to be an ally, go to the front, do the hard work, talk back to your other white friends who clap back and give you, you know, crap about whatever you're doing and stuff. Take those take those brunts that we've been taking for forever and ever and stuff. And it's like, in this town, I've told people that I've like, if you want to do something, go on that Herald website, go on those Herald threads and everything, and go and clap back at some white person who is in support of things and stuff like that. What happens? They don't want to do it because they don't want to be called out by their other friends who say like, why are you supporting Native issues? So it's like, I have a hard time counting on so-called allies because I've just been disappointed time and time again by the fact that they're cowards.
I guess I just wanted to start by just thanking everyone in this room for all of their insight. I'm definitely like the token white person in the room right now, and I know that hopefully there's white people listening and learning as well as I am, and I just really want to role model, like, it's not about ego, it's about sitting back and really taking these words into account, using it as an opportunity to better your knowledge and understanding, and it's really a gift for our communities. But I did want to segue now back to our main conversation regarding the gallery and the statue. Is considering your knowledge and experiences in Durango, what are your general impressions of the gallery?
They are thieves. They hide behind the guise of philanthropy by doing things first off, by making sure that they let others know that they were chopping wood for those poor Navajos, or that they're doing little fundraisers for those poor Navajos, or that they're gathering clothing to take out to those poor Navajos. You know, it's just that whole, once again, it goes to that dehumanization, that imagery that people have of Navajos or Native people, you know, that we're just a poor, pitiful, pathetic lot that just needs handouts from the white people and stuff. So they make sure that they tell people about that. But behind the scenes, they also buy artwork and jewelry. If you've ever walked around in that gallery, the cost of those items is high. So you have to wonder, you know that they are paying pennies to the artists that made those, you know, those beautiful things that are in their gallery, only for them to turn around to mark it up to sell to other people who are going to pay those prices. That's capitalism, right? You go and buy something low, you sell high. That's how it works. And so they kind of go and put in one hand at like, oh, we're the philanthropic, you know, trader and stuff, you know, we're the good guy here and stuff. The bad Indians are the ones that are trying to shut down our goodness over here. Meanwhile, they've been profiting off of Native, you know, late labor, Native artistry, Native imagery for decades. It's infuriating because it's not just them that do that. It's all border towns that do this and behave in this way. Gallup, New Mexico has galleries there. Farmington has that. Page has that. Holbrook has that. We just had an incident down in Scottsdale with Ortega's that did that. And so it's just all these things where the commodification of our artistry that white people are benefiting off of because of capitalism. Their gallery sits on stolen land. They go and use the justification of keeping their stupid statue on that lot because it sits on their private property, but their private property is still stolen land. When you look back at the trader history of what has been going on, it's essentially been white people who have figured out a way to commodify and to capitalize on indigenous ways that we cannot even touch because of the way the system's set up.
As I said in the introduction, I just moved here from Michigan. I don't have like a super strong knowledge of Native cultural affairs. So you come into town, right, and you're new, and you see this big statue of a caricature of a Native American person, and that's kind of what, as a new person in town, I'm led to believe is the standard of how we should view and treat Native people. And then you quickly learn that this sign, this statue, has been called to be taken down. There's all of this controversy. Learning about this issue is just a really great way to get insight into the town and what we really should be focusing on. So I did pay a visit to the gallery. There's soft lighting. The art is really incredible. There's blankets and baskets and lots of paintings. There's some like cowboy and Indian kind of statue artworks. As you said, Stephanie, the work is very expensive. It's up in the thousands for quite a few of the pieces. And the atmosphere is...
It's cheesy. That's the only way I can describe it. Once again, it goes back to the dehumanization of who we are. It's kind of like we're supposed to be stuck back in the past with John Wayne, you know, and it's like, no, that's not how it is. It's like 3 of us sitting in this room right now are contemporary natives, right? We listen to contemporary music. We dress in contemporary clothes. We speak the damn language. And so it's just those things that like, we are here, we've always been here. But then when you walk into these art galleries, you have pictures that are thrown in the past. I'm sure there's probably an end of the trail statue in there, you know, that one native Indian with his head slung down and everything, because we're gone. That was the last Indian ever, as a native looking at it. That's the only way I can describe that place. And the only reason why I know about that gallery is because when I first moved here, I was doing a gallery walk. And that's when they open up the galleries all downtown and you go walk around and check out all the artwork. And I was in that gallery and I was just like, this is just like Gallup. You know, I'm back in Gallup, New Mexico. Look at all this stuff. It's all that cornball, cheesy native artwork. And you think to yourself, where are all the contemporary native artists in this gallery? There is so much amazing contemporary native art that's out there that addresses who we are as native people right now, not this fantasy image. I'm surprised that they didn't have the half-naked native woman up there with the boob hanging out and stuff like that, with her long black hair and the feather hanging out and stuff, you know. That's kind of what people imagine and dehumanize us to being, is that cheesy native art stuff. And so that's what that gallery is.
Truly. I mean, it's continuing that narrative of like the stereotype. And I want to bring in a quote here real quick from Lee Bitsui, who was our director of the Diversity Collaborative, also spoke to kind of that truth of like, it keeps us cemented in the past, and that's where ultimately media and just society in general honestly like to keep us, and it goes towards that stereotype. And I'm glad that you brought that up, Esther, the art being in the gallery and like what it's representing, and even more so with your point, Stephanie, about contemporary native art that we're seeing, you know, on my For You page and my social media, and, you know, with friends and family, and just seeing what we're doing now as a people with our art is just it's so beautiful, and it needs to be celebrated.
Back then, they didn't have things like social media to, you know, promote their own artwork, and they had to depend on these exploitative places like trading posts, like the Ortegas, like the Clarks, and like you said, they really undercut the price and then sell it for way much more than it is. And that really creates a sort of underclass of indigenous artisans to exploit. And you've mentioned that before, and I was wondering if you could maybe explain that interrelation and how that ties into the chief in Toh-Atin.
Well, the commodification comes with the fact that our image is sold, right? That we are now put back in that place where we're in the past. To commodify us is to kind of erase us, really, is what happens. And that statue, you know, it goes much more beyond than just the fact that it's a caricature. You know, the fact is, I mean, our fellow interviewer here, Esther, explained that's her first image that she sees coming into this town. And this is what, 2023 we're in right now. And we're still viewed in that homogenized, goofy, ugly stereotype of a native person. And it's like when you start to dig down into it, it's like, no, there is so much more depth to us than just that. You know, it's like maybe we're a small fraction of the population. So what? We're still here. We still take up a lot of space, and we still have our own identities and stuff. And so it kind of goes hand in hand with the fact that it's dehumanization, it's erasure. It's the fact that it affects us as far as our mental health goes, you know, and on the bigger scale of things, it impacts us as far as being able to do things to make a living when we're being undercut on what we do. You know, it's like we're essentially selling our labor for a white person to capitalize on just because he is able to have the benefits of society give him that place to go and sell things.
I mean, I feel like we've covered so many of the aspects that I was already going to ask about. I guess a good question to continue this would be, do you think the intergenerational aspect of the non-Native families' ownership and the selling of Native art speaks to the long history of colonialism, as well as like why or how can Native people be empowered to represent their own art even in our capitalist society that is still like just frothing with so much racism still?
Take it all down. take it all down. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to, because when you think about intergenerational trauma, you also have to think about it as far as how white people benefit. They have intergenerational wealth. And it doesn't just have to do with people who own businesses. It has to do with people who own land. They own land that they've gained from their families, who gained it from their families, who gained it from their families. And when you go back in the history of all of that, how were they able to get that land? They got that land because they stole it. Plain and simple. They figured out a way to go and bring their racist systems across the pond and everything, go and twist it around to go and fit their needs, and then turn around and think it's superior to anything that was already existing on our homelands, and to go and tell us that, no, we're going to take it because we can. And then they benefit from that. And so that's, so when you look at the Clarks and everything, they have generational wealth. They were able to accumulate capital to be able to do what they're able to do right now. I mean, if you go and take away all the native artists who are selling to them and stuff like that, what would they do? How would they continue their quality of living if they did not have those native artists being able to do that? And so that's where the question comes into play about, is like, how do we reclaim these spaces that have been taken up by white people to capitalize on?
Growing up in a border town, these things weren't really taught to us. I had to leave school to start learning about these things and how, develop a critical understanding of what things like the Toh-Atin statue represents and upholds. And researching these things recently, it weighs on you. And I feel like it weighs on a lot of Indigenous peoples, and especially Indigenous youth, when you look at the rates of, suicide and depression across these places. And I was wondering if you maybe have any sort of knowledge to pass forward to Indigenous youth who feel completely defeated or hopeless when facing these things.
So my message to the younger generation, the generation that's coming up, is to remember that, we have resistance in our body. We have resistance in who we are as people. This country has been trying to get rid of us for centuries. And if they didn't do it outright, then they're doing it kind of like underhanded right now. So it's just kind of like, just keep standing up to that. I know it's hard work, and I know it hurts, and there's a lot of pain, but at the same time, find those within your circle that stand with you and surround yourself with that. One way of doing things is to, reclaiming who you are as a Native person. And if you have ceremony in your family, then go find those ways of doing ceremony and stuff. Even simple things like, going out and praying in the morning, if that's how you do things, or if you pray with water to pray that way, or if you go to sweat lodge, or if you go and smudge off and stuff. Just those little things that you can do to reclaim who you are as a Native person, to understand that we have that power within us to use our identity, our prayers, our ceremonies to go and to defeat what is out there that is trying to beat us down. It's ironic because one of the things that comes with this whole dehumanization is the fact that our ceremonies have been commodified. Our ceremonies have been taken from us, and now we have white women who run around Durango who ask to be smudged off because some other person showed them how to do it. It's kind of like, that's not for you. And so it's like, when you take those ceremonies and take them back and hold on to it and stuff, then you realize that is who you are as a Native person. That is your identity and stuff. It hasn't been commodified. It is a part of who you are because your ancestors, your family, all those before you held on to those ways. And then the other part that I would say is just to just keep standing up, because the fact that you're here standing is a form of resistance. Your existence is resistance.
Stephanie, did you have any closing remarks that you'd like to leave us with? And also on that, would you like to give us and our listeners any resources that they could possibly go towards to elevate and advocate for Native voices and any other voices for that matter, or just any Indigenous businesses that you feel like we should be buying from or trading from?
Okay, first off, thank you once again, you all, for doing this and discussing this and this very important issue that isn't just about a caricature. It's much more than that. It's complicated, it's nuanced, and it's just an indicator of what Native people have to navigate and have to deal with on the daily. So it's like, thank you for doing this, and thank you for putting Native voices out there to speak about this. As far as like what to share with others, it's just like, once again, it just comes back to standing up and fighting back. You know, use your voice, use your presence, use who you are to go and stand up against those systems and those ways that are out there. You know, it's like, to be the good Indian is to be the compliant Native, and that's what the white people want us to be. In my way of looking at things, if you're going to be a compliant Native, then you're a bad Indian. That's all there is to it. So, and as far as like resources to go and look for Native stuff, social media is amazing. I mean, that's where I find Native art and stuff. And the younger generation is so good as far as social media goes and sharing their artwork and stuff. And it's beautiful because it goes beyond just what is cornball. You know, it's not just about eagles and the, you know, flute music playing in the background kind of stuff. Young contemporary Native artists are really bringing it right now and stuff, and it's beautiful. And so if you have social media, go on there. I love being on Instagram because that's where I get to see what they're doing, what they're, you know, and they're out there. They're, you know, and it's just not, it's beadwork, it's jewelry, it's painting, it's, you know, it's creating books, it's creating comic books, it's creating music, it's creating all these beautiful ways that we share who we are as Native people in a contemporary society, because we navigate two worlds, the contemporary and the traditional, and it's beautiful. Oh, and resources, as far as resources go, just best place to go is, I know that Indian Collective does a lot of stuff. Red Nation is a great resource, you know, so go to them about what to do as far as how to stand up and fight back and to do things. And then what's funny is if you follow them on Instagram, you end up going down essentially the Native wormhole, where it kind of connects you with all the other things that are going on out there. And so it's like, if you start with those two sources, it'll take you into other spaces where Natives are occupying and standing up and resisting. Just a quick shout out just to all the people out there who are part of my little small crew and everything. And they're not my people. They're just the people who we try to make movements and stuff like that. And so just, if you see us around and stuff, just support us. And, you know, if you're white, go to the front lines.
We'd like to thank you, the listener, for giving your time to hear these important insights. In our evolving society, Native perspectives are often overlooked or completely disregarded. Your listening contributes to the betterment of our communities and is an imperative step towards social change.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Walk in beauty, not racism.